Let's get joined up. Today's show is brought to you by Audible, and right now you can get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/joinedup. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle or MP3 player. So thanks for tuning in to the Joined Up Writing Podcast, a regular show about all things writing, including interviews with authors, screenwriters, and key figures from the publishing industry, plus loads of hints, tips, and inspiration for all kinds of creatives. You can follow us on Twitter at JU Podcast, leave a quick iTunes review, or just tell a friend. Right, cue that cheesy theme tune.
Put down your pen and stop your typing. Grab yourself a drink, 'cause it's Joined Up Writing.
Hello and welcome to the Joined Up Writing Podcast, where a little procrastination can go a long way. I'm Wayne Kelly and it's episode 101 with CJ Tudor, author of The Brilliant Chalkman, a book that even garnered praise from Stephen King. I was lucky enough to speak to Caroline on the night her latest book, The Taking of Annie Thorne, or The Hiding Place as it's called in the US, was launched at an event in the Waterstones Bookshop in Nottingham. This is an unscheduled episode and I wanted to get it out to you whilst the release is still fresh, hence the extra episode this week. It was great to chat to Caroline again, and she's got loads to say about things like taking the right attitudes toward rejection and knowing when to let go of an idea or project, at least for a period of time. Just a quick reminder that you can find my original chat with Caroline in the archives, episode 77 to be precise, along with the dozens of other author interviews, so don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast or Spotify, or wherever else you can get your podcasts from. Right, let's crack on with the interview, which was recorded in a back office at Waterstones right before Caroline's book launch last week. A big thank you to Amy and the Waterstones team for hosting us, and I can't recommend the Nottingham store enough. It's a beautiful building with 4 floors, full of lovely books, so you know what's not to like. Hope you enjoy the interview, and don't forget to tweet the show at JU Podcast or email Wayne at waynekellywrites.com with your feedback and ideas for future shows. Okay, Caroline, thanks so much for taking the time to cram this in before your book launch of your second book, which
Thank
is
you.
The Taking of Annie Thorne, that's
Yes.
right, isn't it? And in this country, and in America, is it?
It's The Hiding Place in the US,
okay.
yes, which has caused a little bit of confusion. I have had some people say, oh, I think you've
got
got
2
two
books
books out this year. No.
Just the one.
Just the one, yeah, I don't write that quickly.
So tell, for people that don't know, tell us where we are and why you decided to launch it here at Waterstones.
Well, yes, we're in Waterstones in Nottingham, which is my hometown. I'd lived here for most of my life, and I actually wrote part of the Chalkman and part of the Taking of Annie Thorne in this Waterstones, in the cafe here. And I've kind of grown up with this Waterstone, so it's kind of quite special to have my book in this store and have the launches here as well. And of course, The Taking of Annie Thorne is set in Nottinghamshire, so it feels very appropriate.
Why don't you start off by telling us about the book first? So tell us about The Taking of Annie Thorne, what it's about, what's the premise?
Well, The Taking of Annie Thorne is another very dark and creepy thriller. This is set in a former mining village in Nottinghamshire. Our protagonist, Joe Thorne, grew up in the village, and when he was 15, his little sister Annie disappeared for 48 hours. And then she came back. And as Joe says, when my little sister disappeared, I thought it was the worst thing in the world that could ever happen. And then she came back. Because when Annie comes back, she's not quite the same. 25 years later, Joe finds himself returning to the village. There's been a gruesome murder-suicide, and he's received a mysterious message that says, I know what happened to your sister. It's happening again. So he returns to take up a position at the failing secondary school in the village. He's not coming back just for altruistic reasons. He actually has a bit of a gambling problem, and he owes some unpleasant people quite a lot of money. So he's also trying to get away from that. But he has come back to find answers. But coming back to the place where he grew up means facing the people he grew up with. His original gang of friends, the only ones who were there the night that Annie disappeared, and who know what really lies in the abandoned mine beneath the village.
Sounds scary already.
Aha!
So I think you kind of alluded to this last time we spoke. Actually,
Yes.
You mentioned it because am I right in thinking that you'd written a big chunk of this before you wrote the Chalkman even?
I did. The idea for this came about in 2014. And I started writing it then, but then I kind of got a little bit stuck on it. I wasn't quite sure which direction I wanted to go with it. And then I had the idea for the Chalk Man, and that kind of grabbed me. And I thought, because I'm a bit stuck on that one anyway, I'm going to write this. And I wrote that and finished it, and obviously that's done all right. But I still liked the Taking of Annie Thorne. And so when my agent sort of said, when she was sort of pitching it to publishers, said, have you got a book 2 in mind? I said, well, actually, I've written about 50,000 words of a book 2, or what could be book 2. And I was sort of sold on the 2-book deal with both of them, actually, because I'd written quite a lot of it then. So I was committed, in a way, to finishing it once I'd written the Chalk Man, which was both good and bad, I suppose, because I couldn't really change my mind. But it did mean I didn't have to look at a blank page and go, oh, God, what do I do now? So when, at what point was it feeling unstuck basically came about because you'd sort of promised a second book, and this one you'd been made a big chunk? Yeah, I had to do it, basically. There's nothing that focuses the mind like a deadline and a publishing contract. But actually, I think the writing the Chalk Man, it's like sometimes you have to go away from something and come back to it. You just have to take yourself away from something. When I came back, I knew what I wanted to do with it, and I was actually really excited to get started on it again. And the nice thing was that I knew that writing this one, it was going to get published. Whereas, of course, when I was writing the Chalk Man, I didn't have an agent or anything at the time. I was just writing it because. But this time, it felt like there was a purpose to it as well, and that was nice. That was a different experience.
And I mean, some people, that can go either way, can't it? Because for some people, they feel a hell of a pressure about that,
yes.
And they can't work on it, and they get a lot of pressure. But it sounds like for you that was a positive thing, knowing that there was actually an audience there potentially. Yeah,
I think, I suppose I knew I had to deliver it, and that hopefully there'd be a readership. And yeah, like you say, that can be a double-edged sword, because then there is that pressure. And I think I certainly felt it more closer to publication. When I was writing it, I didn't. I was quite happy. I had sort of a deadline, and I had to get this and deliver it. And I actually quite like having a deadline for something. But still, when I sent it off, it was scarier than sending off the Chalk Man. Again, because it was suddenly like, oh, crumbs. God, I hope my agent and my publisher like this, because, oh, God, it's going to be a bit of a disaster if they don't. So that was, it was more nerve-wracking sending it off, the second book off, because obviously they'd loved the first one, and that was quite scary.
And did your process change at all, or did your attitude towards it change a little bit? I mean, did you find presumably you felt a little bit more confident, at least in the writing of it?
Yes, yeah, in some degree, yes. I think because with the Chalk Man as well, the Chalk Man obviously alludes to and has a sort of a horror influence in it. It's quite creepy. And because that had gone down well, I felt perhaps more confident with exploring that more in Annie Thorne. It gave me the confidence to take that a little bit further. Though I don't think you ever feel completely confident about your writing as a writer. You always worry that what you're writing could be absolutely awful and dreadful. The nice thing about writing book 2 was that I could do it full time. And I wasn't able to do that with the Chalk Man. So I developed more of a routine with going out and writing from a certain time to a certain time, and that was a huge privilege.
And what is that? I mean, do you tend to work in the morning, or
yeah.
Is it? No?
I am a morning writer. I like to go out first thing if I can. Go and either go into my writing space that I have now, or go to a coffee shop and write from say 9 till about sort of lunchtime, or I just force myself to write to a certain time. And then if I've got more to say, I'll keep going longer. But I try to do at least 3 to 4 hours, and then by the time then I've gone and walked the dog, and then it's time to pick up my little guy from school, and then chaos descends. I don't really get time to concentrate at all. I maybe do an hour or so in the evening sometimes and pick it up a little bit. But mornings is my writing time.
If you're on it, yeah. I'm a morning person myself. I find them much more productive and fresh-minded. But I know people that much prefer the wee small hours when everyone's
like to write at night, and I can't do that.
My brain's just going to sleep at that
I'm tired.
And I find that on the occasion that I have done it, I don't know whether you're the same, but then I struggle to go to sleep because my mind is awake and I'm going over the story. And
I can edit till quite late at night. If I'm doing editing, I will sometimes edit until the sort of the small hours. But then, as you say, I do struggle then to get to sleep because my mind's still churning over it.
And has your process changed at all, or is it just the same as when you wrote the Chalk Man in terms of how you do it, or
just the same? I think really. I'm still not a planner. I still just dive in and see where I go. So I don't think that will ever change. So no, not a lot really. I've obviously more time to concentrate on it now. I think with book 3, I did make a concerted effort that I wanted to do something a little bit different. from The Chalk Man and The Taking of Annie Thorne. They're both first-person narrators, and have that kind of very, very creepy Stephen King-esque vibe, I suppose. And I actually, with book 3, which I've just finished, I felt I wanted to get away from that a little bit. To kind of, you always want to push yourself and prove you're not a one-trick pony, obviously, as well. So I feel like I'd really enjoyed what I did with The Chalk Man and The Taking of Annie Thorne, but you that's why it never gets easier, I think, because people say, oh, by book 2 or 3 does it get easier? But I don't think it doesn't, because you make it harder for yourself.
You're challenging yourself.
Yeah, of course you do. Yeah.
So I mean, I know we're here to talk about book 2, but with book 3, is that a completely different genre, or
it's still the same genre? So it's still a thriller of sorts, a mystery of sorts, and it's still quite got some weird aspects to it. I will never probably write a straight thriller or crime procedural, because that's not what I like to do. But it's a multi-person narrative, and I think it's quite a very sort of different story. But it has its, I wouldn't say supernatural, it has its strange elements. So it's not, again, a straight thriller.
It's weird,
such.
but
yeah,
but not out and out supernatural.
Yes,
because I suppose in a way it's kind of worked. Well, obviously it's worked out better because you sold The Chalk Man, and the rest is history, as they say. But it's kind of worked out better that The Chalk Man went first, and then Taking of Annie Thorne second. If nothing else, do you think just to sort of ease people in with that other side
absolutely.
of it?
I think I was able to push it a bit more with Annie Thorne, the creepy, dark, slightly. And I say supernatural. Annie Thorne is quite ambiguous in some ways. You can read into it what you will. Mm-hmm. I like people to make their own minds up a little bit about the story as it goes on. And certainly for the first 2/3 of it, it is primarily a mystery crime thriller, I would say. But it does go a bit darker, a little bit more supernatural horror than The Chalk Man did. The Chalk Man alluded to it, but this perhaps goes a little bit further. And what's been nice is most people have gone with that. And I think it was good having The Chalk Man first, because people did like those creepy elements of it. And the people that liked the creepy elements of The Chalk Man have loved Annie Thorne, I think. And even the ones who, perhaps read more traditional mystery thrillers, people have gone with it. I think as long as you don't cheat your reader, as long as you've got plenty of mysteries that are resolved in real time, if that makes real time, in reality.
Yeah, there is a real. You've set
There's
up
a real
these rules
element,
for your world,
exactly.
and you follow those, and you don't
It's not
break
all
them.
like, oh my goodness, there was a monster or a scary ghost or something that did it. As long as you have answers for the most part, that you can get away with a little bit of ambiguity.
Well, Stephen King, who obviously we've mentioned before, because you mentioned, you're lucky enough that he talked about Chalk Man.
Yes.
He's similar, isn't he, in the fact that he writes lots and lots and lots of standalones, and I know he started out in horror, but he's written across lots of different genres.
Yeah.
But yet they're all sort of Stephen King books.
Yes.
You know what I mean? They've all got that kind of, so presumably, you found your voice, and even with
That's
book 3.
it, and that's, obviously, he's a huge hero of mine still, and obviously people talk about him as horror, but so many of his books aren't at all. Or, they might have a slightly scary or spooky element to them, but the story is actually very, very different. He's written lots of books that aren't supernatural at all. But they are very obviously Stephen King books. And hopefully it'd be nice to follow that kind of example, as in not copying, but for people to sort of know this is the type of book that you write. This is what sets you apart as an author. And I think every author has to find their voice and their sort of point of difference to all the other writers out there. So somebody recognises that's uniquely their book, and hopefully then they look for your books.
And do you think, we talked about it before, but obviously you were writing for a long time before you got that first success. Do you ever look back through your older works and the stuff that you didn't get published in your real first novel and all that kind of stuff? Do you ever look through that, and can you kind of see an evolution? Do you sort of see...
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh, God, some of the first stuff I wrote was really awful. Because I think you are trying to find... some people just write something brilliant straight off the bat. And I don't think I was one of those people. I think because I didn't write for quite a long time in my 20s, and I sort of came back to it again. And it took me a while to find my voice and work out what I wanted to write. So I didn't write something brilliant straight away. My first thing I attempted to write and finished was absolutely appalling. And I don't think I could bear to even go back and look at it. It really was so bad. But I think I did get better. Hopefully I did.
Well, you did. The proof's in the pudding.
So. Yeah. And I said there's a couple of bits, a couple of books and ideas I certainly would revisit with a bit of tweaking, I think. Yeah,
I was going to ask you that. Is this idea that nothing's wasted? So you think
I save everything, yeah. Because I took chunks of another story, actually, that I actually put into The Chalk Man. There was a previous book that I started to try and write that I ended up abandoning because I wasn't quite sure, again, where it was going. just felt it wasn't quite there. But I took quite a lot of chunks, and actually Eddie Munster's name in The Chalkman came from that book, because I had, again, a gang of sort of friends in that. And I sort of lifted that and put it into The Chalkman. So, I never waste anything.
And did you start off imitating other authors, would you say? And not necessarily consciously.
I think you are always influenced to an extent. Two of my favourite authors are Michael Marshall and Stephen King, and I think they've been a big influence on my writing. I get the Stephen King comparisons a lot, and some people just don't like me. They think that I copy Stephen King. I don't think I do. I think I put my own take on things, but he has influenced me in the type of books that I want to write. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of that is because, in a way, nobody else in sort of mainstream fiction, to an extent, is writing that type of thriller horror material. It's not been in fashion for a long while. If you think of the sort of crime procedural novels and the sort of thriller, serial killer thrillers, that are all very much of a type, mm-hmm. we don't sort of think twice that it's another serial killer book with just a different detective or whatever, or another sort of domestic noir. But I think the minute you go into sort of territory that Stephen King has covered, or even thematically, people will immediately go, oh well, yes, it's just doing Stephen King. But it's just, I think, because other people haven't been doing it. I think it's as simple as that. And every book, you have to take a theme and make it unique by the way you have the narrative, the characters, the individual take you put on it.
The setting is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Because there's certainly not anybody that's doing that with stuff that's set here.
Well, and that was a big thing that I wanted to do. I always thought, why can't we sort of write those sort of books here in a UK setting? Because I think, that would be a really cool thing to do. And that's what I always wanted to do with it, was to kind of write those kind of horror, thriller sort of mysteries in a UK setting. Yeah, I never even thought, that I would ever do it as put in an American setting. It always had to be a UK setting to give it that unique kind of
It does, and it gives
take.
it, again, it's that kind of, that level of realness that we were talking about, that level of reality, that kind of comes from that, I think. So, obviously, it's been about, just over a year since Chalkman came out. So how have you found being newly published? Is it everything you thought and more, or what have been some of the sort of more surprising things for you?
It's been amazing. Overall, it's been absolutely amazing. And of course, I've been very fortunate that Chalkman was published in a lot of other countries, so I've got to travel to different countries, which has just been...
have to, yeah.
Brilliant. I've had to. But they did ask me. I didn't force myself on them. Go, hey, I'll come and visit you. Just pay for the train. No, I've been asked to go, and it's been really amazing to get to do that. I suppose what I've also learned is that, it is very much a job. Authors do not, swan around in their lakeside retreat, tapping out a few words on the typewriter every now and then before cracking open the cocktails. It is a job, and there are deadlines, and there are publication deadlines, and things have to be in place a long time before a book comes out. So I'm very much already thinking, okay, I'm waiting for my notes on book 3. I've got to get those done. I don't want to be starting book 4 later than end of March, really, because I want to get that finished beginning of next year. Before you are on, I don't call it a treadmill because that makes it sound like it's not enjoyable, but you are working to a schedule if you're going to write a book a year, and you don't have much time to sit around and think in between. You do have to keep going at it, because once you sort of are committed to putting out a book a year, there are lead times in terms of publishers, publicity, and everything else. So I've learned much more about that. That a publisher doesn't appreciate it if you sort of take 2, 3, 4 years to write a book. Really, they kind of want one every year.
I think, well, obviously, for obvious reasons, for commercial reasons. But I do think, society and entertainment in general has gone more like that. I mean, we complain now if we have to wait, sort of 6 months to a year for a brand new 12-part TV series.
It is, yeah. People complain that, oh my goodness, I've got to wait a year for the next book. And it's like, well, give us a chance. I've got to write it.
So it's good in a way because obviously, as you say, you've got that readership and you're building that audience.
And you are building that audience
as well. And there's a thirst for what you want to do, which must feel like a huge privilege, presumably.
It is. I'm still amazed that people, were excited about book 2 coming out, and that hopefully they'll be excited about book 3, and to get that, to build that readership, have people who look for your books is what every author wants. And I think, again, that's why you have to treat it as a job, and you do have to sort of be bringing out a book a year, because people have short attention spans, and you don't want to lose that readership. You want to take them along with you, and keep bringing out books that they love. And and I love, to be honest with you, I did say I was going to give myself a break between the finishing the Taking of Annie Thorne. Finishing my third book, and starting the next one. And actually, I find myself writing some short fiction that I've promised to somebody, and then I know I'll be on to the next. Because if I'm not writing, I do sort of sit there and go, right. I can't not write. So it's all good, actually. With a holiday, when I go on holiday, at least I know I'm going to go and read. Actually, that is the thing. If I'm not writing, I will be reading. But I do still have to do a bit of writing all the time. I'm a bit lost if I can't.
To do something when you're away. The other thing that I like, because I think, as we've got the chimes there in the background, we're not sitting next to Big Ben. That's Nottingham.
But it does look quite London, doesn't it? Because you've got the big wheel illuminated.
You mentioned before, and you kind of alluded to it with the Chalkman and with Taking Of Annie Thorne. You've not bothered about, if you get stuck, you just think, okay, I'll just hop on to this other idea and off you go again. Whereas, I mean, and I speak from personal experience with this, there's a danger sometimes that you sort of feel a bit of a failure doing that. Like you just you cling on to it in the vain belief that, oh my God, I've got to finish something.
Yes.
I've got to finish this thing. If I can't finish it, then it's a complete disaster or whatever. But you don't have an issue with that. You just
I have a lot of unfinished books and manuscripts. And I think sometimes you have to know when to let something go as much as when to stick at something. Every book you get to a point where it is hard, I think, and you think, oh my God, I'm never going to bring all this together. And why on earth did I think this was a good idea? This is ridiculous. This is the stupidest thing I've ever thought of. And I've recognised you get to that point in every book now. But I think there's a difference between, even when you've finished a book sometimes, and I have said to people about submitting books, if you do get enough rejections, and we all get rejections, and books that have gone to be published have had rejections, but sometimes, you have to say, okay, maybe it's not this book, or maybe it's just not this book right now. I need to put it away and do something else, and not beat yourself up about it. That book's time might come, but it's not at the moment. And then get on with doing something else. And it can seem horrible to do that because books are a commitment to finish, a book. It takes at least a year for most people. But that was something that I sort of learned. And I always used to, every time I remember when I finished The Chalkman, I think I pretty much went straight back actually to doing a bit of writing on what is now The Taking of Annie Thorne. Because in my mind, I was thinking, well, if The Chalkman gets rejected, I'll finish this one and I'll submit that one. So in a way, continually writing was a way of warding off failure when I got rejected. It's like if I'm always working on something else, it doesn't matter if that one gets rejected because this one is going to be the one. That's going to be the one that will get published.
But that's a great attitude to have because, again, as I say, the temptation is that you think, well, because that book was quote unquote a failure or somebody didn't pick it up, that maybe I just can't do this and it's just not for me. And, the harsh reality might be that's actually true.
And sometimes that is true, but one publisher told me though that their job is to turn down good books every day. So it's the reasons things don't get published and the reasons things do get published aren't as simple as just writing a great book. And I feel hugely lucky that I have managed to get published. But maybe if I'd submitted The Chalkman another year, another time, there's so many variables that are out of your control. So I always say, stick at it. But the thing I used to take solace from actually was that if an agent, ever bothers to write a note on something or personalise a rejection, that means you have something. They've seen something in your writing. If all you're ever getting is stock replies, then, you might have to think a bit harder. But as soon as you start getting a few personalised rejections, I used to take that as a really positive thing.
And what have you found have you found that you've learnt a lot of... Do you read a lot of books, or have you read a lot of books about writing and stuff like that?
God, no, about writing, no.
Or was that something that never sort of appealed to you and you just thought the best way to learn is to just do it?
I do. I think you can read too much about how to write, that it actually stops you writing because you're too conscious of it. Oh, I shouldn't do this. I mustn't ever do that because that's telling, that's not showing. I mustn't do such and such. And actually, there's a place for these things sometimes. The rules are there to be broken to an extent. I am a completely self-taught writer. I didn't go to college. I didn't go to university. I've never taken a writing course. I have read Stephen King's On Writing, which I think is a great book about writing because it's not what I call a pretentious book about writing. It's something that anybody can pick up and it's all common sense advice. I think I take one of the I'm sure it was from that book that I apply to all my books, is that enter every scene late and leave it early. And I always look at my chapters and go, could I lose that bit at the beginning? And yeah, always leave it because you want someone to want more. But yeah, I pretty much have learned to write by reading, I think, by osmosis, most of it.
What's the worst piece of writing advice that you've ever been given, would you say? Or it might not be, I'm not saying that it's an absolutely terrible piece of writing advice, but it might have just been not right for you, or you just...
Oh, God, trying to think, actually.
Or something maybe that you believed in the past was the right way to do it, and through experience.
I mean, I certainly write... I'm not a very, what I would call a flowery writer. Some people call it literary. I sometimes call it flowery. I like to cut things down sort of to the bone. I very much believe you don't need 20 words if 3 or 4 words will do. And I think, some writers like to use more long-winded ways of saying things, as I would put it. And I suppose something I've learned that works for me is that I don't need to justify myself as a writer by including lots of very extravagant sentences and paragraphs about things. Some people think that makes them a writer or a more important writer by doing that. Whereas I believe, certainly the way my writing works for me, is I'm there to tell a story. And if I can throw in a few interesting sentences and observations about life, that's fine. But for me, that doesn't make you a better writer if you're able to use a lot of long words and a lot of, long, extravagant sentences. For me, it's all about storytelling. Get
on and tell the story.
Get on with it.
So just as we wrap things up, because I know you're going to need to head off in a second, get ready for the launch and stuff. So tell us a little bit about what's next, if you can. I know you mentioned that yet another book is in the pipeline. Can you tell us anything about that?
I can tell you a little bit about that. Just trying to think what I can say, actually. If I just tell you about it's called The Other People, for a start. And basically the premise came to me when we were driving home. I'm on the motorway one night and we were sort of stuck in a slow moving semi-traffic jam. And I was just staring at the car in front that happened to have quite a few stickers around the rear window, various things that were obviously sort of old ones accumulated over time. And I'm just staring at this car. And then for some reason, I don't know why this thought occurred to me, I thought, I wonder if a face sort of popped up in the rear window right now. And then my next thought was, God, imagine if it was a child. Imagine if it was your child in this strange car that you've never seen before, and your child should be at home and they're suddenly looking at you from the back of the car in front. And that became the premise for the start of The Other People, basically. That the character is driving home one night, we think, from work. And a little girl's face pops up in the rear window of this rusty old car in front and waves, Daddy. And that sort of, it starts from there, basically. And, we sort of, he tries to find this car. And that's the way the mystery starts. It evolves where we rejoin the character many years later. And we don't know quite what happened to his daughter or how he's, got to this position. But he spends all his days and nights in a camper van travelling the motorway searching for the car that he thinks took his daughter. At this stage, we don't know quite what happened to her. And there are other characters that are all part of the story, but we don't know how they're all quite connected. But that was the premise. That was the starting point.
Again, does sound creepy.
Yeah, it is quite creepy. And The Other People, well, what they are is sort of revealed as we go along.
Yeah, don't give us any more than that. That sounds great. Well, good luck with the launch. Obviously, it's out. It'll be out now. I'm going to put this out next week, so this will be out by the time this goes out. Then that's great. But good luck with everything else.
Thank you.
Good luck with the launch tonight.
Thank you very much. Yay.
Okay, thanks again to Caroline, and I highly recommend Chalkman and The Taking of Annie Thorne, or The Hiding Place if you're in the US, which I'm currently devouring as an audiobook on Audible. And don't forget, you could listen to that as your introductory free credit by going to audible.com/joinedup, which will also help you to support the show. I'll put all of those links in the show notes over at joinedupwriting.co.uk. That pretty much wraps things up for another week, but don't forget you can find the entire back catalogue of interviews on the website. Make sure you subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Overcast, or wherever else you get your podcasts, and that way you can have the show downloaded automatically every week. Also remember to get in touch with all your writing news, views, questions, comments, or whatever, and I'll try and give you a mention in a future show. Look out for the next episode when I'll be chatting to New York crime author Jason Starr. Until then, Thanks for listening. I'm Wayne Kelly. Happy writing and reading, and I'll see you next time.
Joined up